Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Michael Tasner, and this presentation is all about accelerating enrollments using paid traffic and some really great follow-up. So again, appreciate you being here. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to type them in the little box. I will do my very best to get to questions. If not, fasten your seatbelt. I promise you this is going to be a lot of really great content. It's going to be pretty fast-paced because we've got a lot of cool stuff to cover, and I really look forward to showing this content with you. So 30-second bio about us, and I'll give you a few seconds about me so you know who you're learning from. So I run a company called Local Childcare Marketing, and we work with well over 150 preschools, childcare centers, daycare centers throughout the United States, and simply help them increase enrollments. So they typically hire us and say, hey, Michael and team, we need to add enrollments. So that is what our company specializes in. We do websites and social media and paid traffic. So all the stuff I'm going to train you on today, we can help you with. My 10-second bio, I've been doing marketing for about 15 years. I've written a couple of books on marketing. I blog on some really cool places like Forbes, for example, and I just love working with childcare centers. So here's how we actually execute this stuff. So I'm already diving into the content. So in terms of how do we increase enrollments, and that always is the number one question that I get asked from the owner of a center or the director of a center. How do you actually do it? We're trying some different things or doing some different things. Are there some strategies and ways to actually make it happen quickly? So the first thing is I always look at their websites, and you might be thinking, well, I've got a pretty good website, but the challenge that I found with a lot of websites and places that parents are going to read information is that they just don't have all the information, or they're not necessarily set up to convert. So you might be missing the big phone number in the top right-hand side of the website, for example, or multiple sign-up forms to take tours. So I like to look at the website first. The second place is wanting to make sure that not only is that website set up correctly, but it's working really, really well for search or SEO. So I'm based in Buffalo, New York. So if someone's typing in preschool Buffalo, New York, an infant care, Buffalo, New York, different phrases, I need to make sure that your center is showing up. And what I love about those phrases is that they're called buying intent. So someone is actively searching for what you offer. The other piece is I want to make it easy for people to find you through optimized listings. So the Google Map listings, for example, I want to make sure that they can easily find your center. They can see the hours, more details, nice pictures, if there's a virtual tour, all of that good stuff. Social engagement. So it's not just posting, a couple of times a week on social, it's actually having a full-blown strategy around it and having a strategy that you're converting some of the people from just kind of passive watchers or listeners to, yeah, I want to raise my hand and yeah, I'm interested in taking a tour. So social is great. And the pay-per-click stuff, which is we're going to talk the bulk of our conversation today, what I love about paid traffic you're going to find is that it's the quickest way to drive enrollments. Quickest way to drive enrollments, and there's a lot of other options and tactics as well. So you're going to learn quite a bit of things today. So it's not just one or two surface level things. I'm going to go pretty deep in the tactics with you today with an intention of giving you some really great value. So the first thing you're going to learn is your first step should be having a solid paid traffic strategy. So again, if the first question I'm getting from owners of centers, for example, is how do I increase enrollments? There are a lot of ways to do it, but the first one and the fastest one is using paid traffic. I'm going to talk about why a lot of these campaigns failed. So you may say, well, I've tried that before and it just didn't work. I don't think anything happened. keyword think. So I might debunk that one a little bit. We're going to talk about actually how to create really good, captivating ads. So ads that compel these parents to actually click on your listing versus someone else. I'm going to give you some of the tracking elements of, what stuff should we be tracking? So notice on that last slide I mentioned, you might have said something like, well, I've tried it and I think it really didn't do anything. I need you to know with certainty which of your marketing investments are paying off. So I'm going to show you how to track this stuff as well. I'll show you how to minimize your investments and maximize the return, which is always a beautiful thing. And I'm going to tell you a couple of the secrets that things that we do to really set your campaigns apart from everyone else. So why should your first step be to have this solid PPC strategy? This is why. So if you're saying, Michael, what can we do in the next week or two? I'm not talking 6 months, I'm talking weeks, to increase activity and drive some leads, drive some calls, drive some potential enrollments and tours. This is the only strategy that I know of that you can not only track, but you can deploy it effectively and very, very targeted. So I'm just going to use the kind of the counter opposite. So let's say radio. Yes, you can start showing up on radio in the next couple of days if you wanted, for example, but you're not targeting just to parents, for example. Whereas Google paid traffic, you're going to be showing up in the search immediately. That is why this should be your first go-to. Let me go back here, sorry. What I love about not only just showing up quickly, it's the fact that we can track this perfectly using tracking phone numbers and landing pages, but it can be perfectly measured. So if you put in $1,000, I'm just going to use some simple math, and it quote unquote spits out 10 leads, and I'm using the word leads in generality, but 10 sets of parents that are expressing interest in a tour. And then you figure out what your math is, and every center is different, but let's say that a handful of those end up turning into enrollments. Well, so then you know that, okay, great, if you put in $1,000 into the system and the strategy, that it's going to spit out 3 enrollments or 4 enrollments. Well, what if you ratchet it up a little bit and put in $2,000 or $1,500 to hit that capacity? This is the perfect strategy for what I like to call almost unlimited scalability. Because once it's kind of tweaked and figured out and you get the math down, you just turn it up, turn it up. It's a lot easier to hit your capacity. And a lot of the centers that we've worked with, then once we hit the capacity, well, then they start thinking of potentially opening up another location because now they've got a huge waiting list. So it's the only strategy that you can hyper target and show up immediately. Now, a lot of campaigns that have been done in the past, and even ones that you may try to do yourself, that they fail. Unfortunately, Google is a little bit tricky to get things set up, and that's why we've been doing it for 10 plus years. So it takes some time to master, but you can't advertise on just random sites because you're not actually reaching the parents. So a lot of people think, well, I'm just going to go and throw up some different advertising on some different places, but if they're not specializing in reaching the people that you're looking for, it's not going to end up happening. The other piece with Google AdWords is it's really complex. There's bidding strategies, there's day parting. When do you run the ads? Do you maximize for conversions or clicks, and what keywords? And so it can be a little bit complex. A lot of people think that it's just loading in a couple of keywords and saying send traffic to my homepage and the phone will start ringing. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as that. The other thing is if you're not using really specific ads, a lot of times I see ads that they're really generic and they don't actually call out the different services, the different products that you're offering correctly, and different landing pages and things like that, which we'll talk more about as well. Those are three of the things that I'm seeing on a daily basis that kind of set some challenges up for making the campaign a little bit hard to scale, but even a campaign that's a little bit hard to drive results. So, I mean, how do you actually structure your campaign for success? So what you want to do is you want to set it up based on locations initially. So obviously you serve a particular city, and if you have multiple locations or multiple centers, you may have a couple of different cities. So you want to structure it around the locations and then really start to hyper target in those particular areas. So you'll know based on your demographics how far are parents willing to drive. So I'm going to use again Buffalo, for example. It's a pretty big city. Quite a few childcare centers in Buffalo. So you're going to want to look at particular zip codes and even particular neighborhoods instead of targeting the whole entire city of Buffalo. You want to hyper target and structure the account based on those locations. The second piece is you want to see what people are actually searching for. So you want to do the keyword research. What are the specific phrases that they're typing in that correlate to what you have open? So a lot of centers, they offer everything, but they may say, well, my infant and toddler room is full. I really need pre-K enrollments as an example. So you want to make sure that you're doing that keyword research and you're typing in pre-K with different cities, and are people typing in preschool? Are they typing in pre-K? Are they typing in early learning? What are the different phrases after school program? You want to do all of that keyword research. And then you just literally just go and you can start to create your first campaign, and you're going to write some text. So if you're going with the preschool, for example, you're going to go in there and write something like, and again, I'm just bouncing this and doing this live in real time with nothing. I mean, the presentation is structured, but the ad copy is not. But something like, stop in for a tour and see why XYZ Center is the top rated in Buffalo, for example. So you want to create that first ad that's structured to the particular location that you're looking for. So take a quick sip of water here. Hang with me for just a second here. One of the downsides of living in Buffalo is that the weather is consistently changing. So I think I caught a little bit of a cold. So hang with me if I have to sip some water throughout the presentation. So you're going to create the first campaign. You're going to create your first text ad. And then what you do is you're going to want to add some of the different keywords into that ad group. So you may have the ad group called Buffalo Pre-K. Then you're going to load in, here are the 5 keywords or 3 keywords or 50 keywords that we want to show up for. And you've got your ad written. So now you've got some keywords. You've got an ad written. And then you want to make sure that you've got the settings adjusted to correlate to when you can take phone calls and when you want to have your ad showing up. But one thing I caution you on is that a lot of the centers, they say, well, I only want the ad running when I can actually take calls. And that's from 7 to 6, for example. But the challenge is if your parents are working at that time, adjust this microphone there. If your parents are working at that time, you might want to look at having to have it be open a little bit later. Your ads are running a little bit later, not necessarily keep your center open until, 10 o'clock at night, for example, but you might want to have a strategy to take some of those calls that are a little bit later so that if the parents can't call you on a lunch break, for example, to schedule a tour, you give them some other options as well. So how do you actually create captivating ads? So unfortunately, with a fair amount of centers, and a lot of people wanting to do paid traffic, things can get to be a little bit generic. So what do you do to kind of differentiate yourself? So the first thing is, I like to say less is more. you don't need a 10-page ad. You need something that really just grabs their attention quickly. Free tours, first week free. Something that we've been testing that's working pretty well also is, and it's more after you've got them in for the tour, but I mean, free month of meal delivery service, or free subscription to Instacart if you enroll, different things like that. Something that's really going to grab their attention. But you need to make sure that you know your customer and that target demographic. So using verbiage and language that's going to speak to them. So if you know that they're always busy parents and they're always dual income, and maybe the ad says, you need, as a dual income family, you need a place you can trust. Learn more today, for example. You're knowing the customer, you're not putting a ton of stuff in there, but you want to have that clear call to action. So what's that next step that you want them to take with you? Is the next step to book a tour, call in to learn more? You want to make sure you have a clear call to action as well. Let me go back to that for just a second. I just want to add one more point on the clear call to action. It's also the fact that you can do some really cool things with the calls to action. So you can also have it where they can click the ad and it actually calls right up to you. So it can actually call your phone number, for example. So there's some cool things that if phone calls are what you're looking for, there's some really stealth things that you can do with AdWords. This is the piece that I really, really enjoy. And it's, I mean, how do you actually track this stuff? Like, how do you figure out if the money that you're investing is actually producing returns? So here's some of the things that you want to measure. So the first thing is obviously taking whatever budget you're investing, and you can set a daily budget, a weekly budget, a monthly budget, whatever you'd like to start with. But the first thing you want to look at is, what is the average cost per click that you're paying? So if someone's Googling and end up clicking on your ad for Buffalo Pre-K, does that cost you $3 a click, $2 a click? What does it actually cost you? Oops, somehow I went up here. The other one is conversions. So what are you paying per click? How many conversions are coming in? So if you're, again, investing $3 a click, and just hang with me for the math here. So you get 100 people that click. So you invested $300. How many of those either went to your landing page and filled out the form? How many of those called to equal a conversion? Now, this is where a couple of centers may challenge me a little bit here, but just hear me out on this next piece. My job as the agency, for example, or who's ever executing this campaign for you, my job is to get you leads, and then your job is to take that lead and get them enrolled. Now, you may say, oh, some of the leads aren't great, and not all the leads are going to be perfect. But I deem a conversion somebody that has expressed interest in booking a tour. So I want to know, of those 100 people that clicked, did we get 10 people that filled it out, the form? We get 15 phone calls. What do those numbers look like? And then from there, you can close the loop and say, okay, great. Of those, we ended up getting 5 enrollments or 3 enrollments or whatever the numbers are. And that's how you then scale the campaign. Once you know those numbers, but it takes them in a month or two or so to get those numbers dialed in. But once you have those numbers are extremely, extremely powerful. Knowing your closing percentages, knowing your cost per leads, how many conversions do you need, people expressing interest in tours that actually come in and do the tour. And then there's other ways to kind of, and we won't talk about it in this particular webinar, but other strategies to then have a ton of excellent follow-up. Maybe I'll go into a few things on this one as well. But knowing your cost per click and the conversions, those are the two main metrics that you want to be tracking. And then again, you can close that loop when you know the people that are coming in, did they end up turning into enrollments? So how do you then maximize how much you're investing and have your return? be even higher. So minimize, I think I said that wrong. How do you minimize your cost per lead and maximize the overarching return? A little bit trigger happy here. My apologies. So I'm going to rattle off a couple of ideas and a couple of strategies for you. So this is a little bit stealth and a little bit advanced, but you never want to bid on being number one. So if you were setting up this campaign for yourself, which I don't recommend, but I'm giving you a lot of great details to do it if you wanted to try. The downside to being number one in Google AdWords, for example, is the fact that those people often are they're throwing a lot of money to be number one. So you may find that to be number one in Google AdWords, to bid on that phrase, maybe it's $5 a click. But to be number two is $3 or $2.50. And then to be number three is $1.20. So you can actually see the variances in the different positions. And there's always a pretty big difference between number two and number one, and often a huge difference between being number one and number three. So we try and be in the second to third spot. So that's one way that you really can minimize how much you're investing per click. You can also try lowering your bids a little bit and seeing, how does that affect that? Another thing to maximize your ROI is you want to make sure then that you have there's a cost per click version that Google will offer you, that they'll maximize it to try and get you lots of clicks. Or they have a little checkbox that you can check that actually allows you to maximize for conversions. And that's the piece that you want to check. Most people don't even know that exists, and that'll start to help you tremendously. The other thought, in terms of keeping an eye on potential waste or other issues, is really just making sure that you're going after specific keywords. I don't like to use broad match. That'll allow Google to show you for a lot of other related phrases. Like they might show you for someone types in playground for phrases that are related but not. So you really want to be very careful with that. I like to do exact match. So people are typing in the very specific phrases that you want to target and go after. So I want to give you a couple of secrets that are going to really set your campaigns apart from the competition. So all about giving away secret sauces. So the first one is we split them into very strategic ad groups based on our experience in the area of preschool and childcare centers, so we can target the most needed enrollment. So we're maximizing the return because we have all these other centers from the data we've got. We know all the different keywords that are working well. There's something called negative keywords that we know that we want to add in. So we have all this data. So we actually have all of the ad campaigns and ad groups ready to go. We can actually get you up and running in about 2 weeks. The other piece is that we have on-site copywriters that write compelling copy. They're trained in, I wonder if I have the book over here. Let's see, little impromptu thing. One of my favorite books, Words That Sell, for example. I'm a student of marketing myself. I love copywriting and fun things like that as well. But our team is actually trained in direct response copy, so they know how to write that really compelling ad to entice them to click. A lot of centers will advertise on Google, and you can be number 2 and 3 in Google, but if your ad isn't good, no one clicks, there's really no point in advertising. And finally, we have something called call extensions, and this really allows us to minimize the clicks and really focus on people that are directly calling you. Google has this really cool tool called call extensions. We often can start driving calls, in the first 2 weeks of a campaign. So I hope this has been helpful and had given you some good information. I see that there's been a couple of questions that have came through, so I will make sure to respond to those in just a second. But wanted to give you just a couple of details on, what we could do to help. So if we were working with your center to help you get this stuff executed, the first thing is we always look at, what are the goals of the campaigns? And we'd create a really interesting funnel around that to meet the goals. And what I mean by funnel is often one of the challenges that we see with centers is that they have leads coming in, but they don't have a really good process to follow up or kind of keep them warm. So we actually put together email sequences and series that they're warming up those leads for you. And that funnel then will meet the goal that you're looking for. Do you need more pre-K? Do you need more infants? Do you have multiple locations? We'll create the funnel to match those goals. We've got some really advanced and stealth keyword stuff that we can do. And again, the beautiful thing is because we've been doing this for so long, we can get up and running very, very quickly, and there's really no waste. Because we know, again, what's working and what's not. And there's differences between cities, but they're slight differences. We'll get all the campaigns set up, get all the various ad groups, get everything optimized. We'll get all the tracking phone numbers going for you, and just start driving calls, driving potential enrollments. And again, behind the scenes, then we have them getting warmed up through our different emails that we have written, and then working with you on a regular basis. So we're talking with you on a regular basis, getting feedback, and so on. So I would absolutely love to help you. I'll give you some information in a second on how you can get in touch with us and how we could help. And then I'm going to take a couple of quick questions that I saw came in. So how do you follow up with interested parents? So this is a little bit of a double-edged sword, and I'll tell you why. So my philosophy is as soon as and again, I'm using the word lead, but as soon as the parent submits the form, this lead form comes in, ideally you want to be responding to that person as quick as possible because they were in that state and thinking about it. So in a perfect world, you're calling and following up as quickly as you possibly can. Now, if it's a parent and they're at work, they might not be able to call you until later in the day, or they might not check their voicemail till the evening or the next day, for example. I know that I tend to shut my phone off in the evening personally, so you'd want to catch me at certain times. So you need other methods to warming them up. So we're huge fans of email. And when the parents are filling out the form, we're going to grab their email. And I love to actually have not only this really good email sequence that we've written, and then we customize it for your center, but if possible, we actually will include some video. I'm just going to take another quick sip of water here. We can include some video, some pictures, and just make it a little bit interactive. And what our goal is, when the parent comes in for the tour, I want them 2 or 3 times as warm as they were from when they first filled out that lead form. I want them coming in and essentially ready to enroll with you. And we do that by having these really compelling emails and moving them along the needle quickly. So you've got to have an automated way to be following up with these people other than just having, sheets of paper, for example, that, hey, call this person tomorrow and send them a text message. You need to make sure that you're on top of this stuff. So in terms of how can we help, this is the website. You can also shoot me an email. You can shoot me a chat message. It's michael@localchildcaremarketing.com. But you can book a discovery call. And there's no cost. They're fun. They're interactive. It's not a salesy call. It's just me learning about your center and seeing if there's some fun ways that we could help. But you can go to localchildcaremarketing.com/discovery. So I'm going to take a couple of quick questions, and then I will let you get back to the rest of your day. But I really appreciate you attending and interacting and being here. So let's see here. First question that I have. Michael, what is a good budget? So I'll give you a couple of different responses to that. So it's going to depend on the size of your center. Do you have multiple locations? And really looking at how fast do you need to increase enrollments. So we just enrolled a center out in Texas a couple of weeks ago, and they needed to get some quick enrollments. So we wanted to raise their budget a little bit. We've got other centers, their budget's $200 or $300 a month on paid traffic. We've got centers that their budgets are $5,000 a month on paid traffic. So, I mean, obviously that's a pretty big gap between the two. But I mean, for the average center, usually $300 to $500 a month in terms of your paid traffic budget, plus whatever the company like ours that's charging you to manage it and set it up and all that good stuff. That's usually a good starting point. And the thing that I find interesting, and it's been a little bit of an uphill battle in working with centers, is that for some reason, and this is how my brain works, but I know a lot of your brains don't work like this. A lot of times they don't think of this type of stuff as needed. But I'll give you, a perfect real life example. So I just talked to a gentleman that owns a center yesterday or the day before, and they have space for 30 more enrollments with an average weekly of $150, $175. So when I do the math, I mean, if we were to help add, and I'm just using really small numbers, 5 new enrollments, for example, and let's say that each of those, and I'll just round the numbers down, $500 a month, for example, I mean, that's $2,500 a month reoccurring. That to me, it makes a lot of sense. And why wouldn't you invest resources to add potentially $2,500 a month? And that was only adding 5 when he has capacity to add 30. So it's that balancing act of, and I know that there's always extra expenses and staff and building repairs and other things that you need for the center. I completely understand, but it's always that catch-22. And I mean, I face it internally as well as the owner of the company. Of investing more and more and more in marketing. It's that how fast do you want to grow or how bad you need the revenue? You got to invest something. So I hope that answered your question. Another question I have here is how far do you target around the center? So that really depends again on how far people are willing to drive. Again, I like to give you real world examples instead of just speaking theoretically. So I mean, most of the centers, they'll say 3 to 5 miles, but there was a lady that I spoke with a couple of days ago, and I asked her that exact question. Tell me about the demographics, the people that you're looking to attract. And she said, well, people will drive as far as 12 to 15 miles because there are a bunch of big brand names that they're going to pass along the way, but they're 2 times as expensive as we are. So in her case, I mean, she'd be targeting 10, 15 miles around the center, for example. But I mean, at some of the centers there, it's a pretty tight radius. I mean, 3 to 5 miles. Really also depends on how big the city that you're in. If it's a smaller city and population-wise, you may target the entire city. The good thing is with Google, you can look on the map and really do that radius targeting. Only other question that I have, unless someone else has some additional questions, this question is about paid traffic on Facebook. Got it. I see another question here, so I'll grab that one in just a second. So I like Google, and I like Google as a good starting point because you can show up for all the phrases that you're looking for. So if you want to quickly show up for pre-K in XYZ city, you can be showing up very, very quickly. Facebook ads is interesting and creates another interesting opportunity because you can do a lot more demographic targeting. Now, Google added a lot of demographic targeting, so Google is still my perfect starting point for centers. We're doing a lot more Google advertising for the centers we work with versus Facebook. But if the budget allows, I love to do Google in tandem with Facebook, because often what will happen is a parent will be scrolling through their news feed, so they're on their cell phone and they're scrolling through and they see your ad, for example, and then they happen to go to Google and pop over there and they're going to see your ad. so they're getting that marketing repetition. But in terms of return on investment, we're still seeing better results from Google ads. That's just from what we've been seeing, but we do manage quite a bit of Facebook ads as well. Another question I've got here is, if we're not in the number one position, are we going to miss opportunities? The short answer to that question is, I mean, traditionally, no. So you can run in the top position and then lower to number two and just look. So you can, the beautiful thing with this stuff is you can test all this stuff. So run it for a week and see how many clicks you're getting when you're in number one position versus number two. Often we don't find a lot of difference. The other thing that we don't like about the number one position is that often people will just click on the number one position and not even read it. So the downside to that is that often those are people, they're just boom, click, and they're just going there. You might say, well, isn't that a good thing? Well, yes and no, because a lot of the centers, they're only looking to attract a certain type of parent that our ad might even discourage them from clicking and just say a particular thing. So maybe the ad says, if you're looking for a preschool, right for you, but that particular parent has an infant, for example, and then they go to your landing page and that number one spot just cost you $5 because they didn't read the ad. So we have strategically found, after lots and lots of testing, that the number 2 to 2.5 spot, it is the best. Any other questions? If not, I'd absolutely love to talk to you. I love to help. We do this all day, every day, and we're the biggest digital agency that only works with childcare centers. So please feel free to book a call at localchildcaremarketing.com/discovery. Shoot me an email at michael@localchildcaremarketing.com, or feel free to call me as well. But I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy to answer any more questions as you see fit, and I'll connect with you very soon. Talk to you later.